Professor Krell had seen combat on 14 different worlds, survived 3 assassination attempts, and once stared down a thoraxian deathworm without blinking. So naturally, he thought teaching advanced predator psychology at the Galactic Academy would be a nice, quiet way to spend his retirement years. He was wrong. Very, very wrong. "All right, you soft-bellied academics," Krell growled. His forearms crossed intimidatingly as he surveyed the classroom. His exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lighting, battle scars telling stories his students would never hear. "Welcome to Advanced Predator Psychology, where we study the galaxy's most dangerous hunters. Half of you will drop out by week 3. The other half will have nightmares for the rest of your pathetic lives." The students shifted nervously in their seats. Well, most of them did. Vex, a sleek reptilian from the Soros system, lounged arrogantly in the back row. His species had conquered 12 star systems through sheer predatory superiority, and he wasn't about to let some old military fossil intimidate him. His forked tongue flicked out dismissively. Thorn clicked and chittered from the middle section, her compound eyes scanning for threats out of pure instinct. As a warrior caste member of the Zephyrian hive, she'd been bred specifically for combat. The concept of fear was theoretically foreign to her kind. Theoretically. And then there was Pip. Despite being roughly the size of a dinner plate, the furry little Vixonian had earned her place in this advanced course by writing a thesis on efficient disembowelment techniques in low-gravity environments. She sat perfectly still, which somehow made her more unsettling than if she'd been bouncing around. Finally, there was the human. Jake Martinez slouched in his chair like he was waiting for a pizza delivery rather than attending one of the galaxy's most prestigious and terrifying academic courses. His species had only joined the Galactic Federation 5 years ago, and their admission was still controversial. Most civilized species considered humans either adorably primitive or absolutely terrifying, depending on which Earth documentaries they'd watched first. "Now then," Krell continued, pulling up a holographic display of various galactic predators. "Today, we'll be discussing behavioral patterns in apex hunters. Each of you will present a case study from your homeworld's most dangerous predators." Vex practically purred. "Professor, my species has dominated our food chain for over 10 million years. I could discuss hunting techniques that would make your military training look like a children's game." "Noted," Krell replied dryly. "Thorn?" The insectoid warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The Zephyrian battle wasps of my world hunt in coordinated swarms. Their tactical precision has never been matched by any off-world military force." "Fascinating, Pip." The small creature's voice was surprisingly deep and menacing. "The shadow stalkers of Vixen can phase through solid matter while hunting. They're considered mythological by most species because so few prey survive to report encounters." All eyes turned to Jake, who was busy doodling what appeared to be a cartoon cat in his notebook margins. He looked up suddenly, realizing everyone was staring at him. "Oh, yeah, I brought my emotional support animal for the demonstration. He's pretty good at the whole predator thing, I guess. Very feline." The universal translators struggled with that last word, spitting out rough approximations in various alien languages. Professor Krell's primary eyes narrowed with interest. "An Earth predator? How? Refreshing. Most human students just talk about those bear creatures or the striped hunter cats you call tigers." Jake shook his head. "Nah, this is just my regular house cat. His name's Whiskers. Super chill guy. Loves belly rubs and knocking things off tables. I figured he'd be perfect for showing everyone what Earth predators are really like." The classroom fell silent. A house cat. A dwelling guardian. An apex hunter trusted enough to share living space with humans. The implications were staggering. Professor Krell felt a familiar tingle of anticipation. In all his years of studying predatory behavior, he'd never encountered a human who casually cohabitated with their world's apex predators. "This should be educational," he murmured, making a note in his digital roster. "Class dismissed. Tomorrow, young human, we'll see what Earth's household guardians are truly capable of." The next day, Professor Krell arrived early to prepare the classroom for what he assumed would be a demonstration of epic proportions. He'd moved all the fragile equipment to safety, installed emergency containment fields, and even requisitioned a medical team to stand by. After all, any predator that humans kept as a house guardian had to be absolutely lethal. Beck slithered into the classroom, his scales gleaming with anticipation. "Professor, I've been researching Earth predators all night. Their big cats can leap over 20 feet and crush bones with their jaws. If humans keep these creatures in their homes, they must have incredible dominance displays. Impressive deduction, Krell nodded approvingly. Though I suspect we're dealing with something even more formidable. Humans have a tendency to understate dangerous situations. Thorne skittered in next, her compound eyes darting nervously around the room. My hive sisters are concerned about today's demonstration. We've calculated that any predator living symbiotically with humans must possess advanced pack-hunting intelligence. The behavioral implications are terrifying. Pip hopped onto her desk with unusual agitation. I've been having stress dreams about Earth predators all night. My species' natural instincts are screaming warnings, and we don't even know what we're dealing with yet. Professor Krell felt a surge of professional pride. Finally, students who understood the gravity of predator studies. Excellent preparation, all of you. Now let's discuss what we might expect from Jake's demonstration. Obviously, Vex hissed, this house cat must be some sort of apex hunter that's formed a symbiotic relationship with humans. Perhaps they hunt together, or the cat provides protection in exchange for food and shelter. Thorne's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The term house cat suggests territorial behavior. It's probably claimed the entire human dwelling as its hunting ground. The fact that it allows humans to coexist implies either remarkable intelligence or complete confidence in its dominance. Don't forget, Pip added ominously, Jake mentioned it enjoys knocking things off tables. That sounds like territorial marking behavior mixed with psychological warfare tactics. Professor Krell nodded sagely. All valid observations. The creature's name, Whiskers, likely refers to highly advanced sensory apparatus. Many apex predators use specialized facial sensors to detect minute vibrations from prey. Just then, Jake wandered into the classroom, looking like he'd overslept and grabbed coffee from 3 different vending machines. He was carrying what appeared to be a standard Earth travel container, the kind used for transporting small objects safely. Morning, everyone, Jake yawned, setting the container down carefully. Sorry I'm a bit late. Whiskers was being super dramatic about getting into his carrier. You know how cats are about traveling. The universal translators worked overtime trying to parse dramatic and carrier, eventually settling on something roughly equivalent to displaying pre-hunt agitation and mobile containment unit. Vex's pupils dilated with excitement. It requires specialized containment during transport. Fascinating. My species simply leashes our hunting companions. Oh, he doesn't need a leash, Jake laughed, completely missing the horrified expressions around him. He's way too lazy for that. Plus, he'd probably just lie down and refuse to move. Classic cat behavior, right? The aliens exchanged meaningful glances. A predator so confident in its abilities that it saw no need for restraints. A creature so secure in its dominance that it would deliberately demonstrate vulnerability as a psychological tactic. Professor Krell cleared his throat professionally. Class, what we're about to witness is likely unprecedented in galactic academic circles. A human demonstrating the behavioral patterns of their homeworld's apex predators. I want detailed notes on hunting techniques, threat displays, and pack dynamics. Actually, Jake said cheerfully, Whiskers is pretty much the opposite of a pack animal. He mostly just sleeps in sunbeams and judges people. But sure, I guess you could call his staring a threat display. The room fell completely silent. A solitary hunter. One that had moved beyond pack dynamics to become so perfectly evolved that it operated as a single, unstoppable force. Professor Krell felt his military instincts kick in. Perhaps we should establish some basic safety protocols before you release your companion. Jake blinked in confusion. Safety protocols? For Whiskers? I mean, I guess make sure nobody's allergic to cat hair? The universal translators gave up entirely on that last phrase, leaving the aliens to imagine what sort of biochemical warfare an Earth predator might be capable of. All right, Jake said, completely oblivious to the tension crackling through the room like an electrical storm. Let me introduce you all to Whiskers. He unlatched the carrier with the casual confidence of someone opening a lunchbox. The entire classroom held its collective breath. Professor Krell's hand instinctively moved toward the emergency alarm. Vex coiled his muscular body into a defensive position. Thorne's wings began vibrating at combat frequency. Pip had gone completely motionless, which in her species indicated either deep meditation or preparation for explosive violence. What emerged from the carrier was 12 pounds of orange fluff, with the most judgmental expression in the known galaxy. Whiskers stepped out with the dignified air of a creature who had never doubted his own supremacy. stretched his front paws in a movement that displayed retractable claws with surgical precision, and then sat down to begin washing his left hind leg, with the methodical efficiency of a professional assassin cleaning his weapons. The silence in the room was so complete that you could have heard a quark decay. "Isn't he gorgeous?" Jake beamed, apparently interpreting the stunned silence as admiration. "He's a bit chunky because he's not very active, but look at those eyes. Classic predator focus, right?" Those eyes were indeed focused. Whiskers had finished his grooming and was now staring directly at Vex with the unblinking intensity of a creature calculating exactly how many different ways it could end a life. His pupils were dilated just enough to suggest interest, his ears forward in perfect predatory attention. Vex, apex predator of the Soros system, conqueror of worlds, terror of the galactic rim, slowly began sliding under his desk. "Oh wow," Jake continued cheerfully. "He really likes you, Vex. See how he's staring? That's his hunting face. He probably thinks you'd be fun to chase." Professor Krell's military training warred with his academic curiosity. The creature before him was clearly a predator, but it was also impossibly small. Yet every instinct he'd developed over decades of combat was screaming danger signals. The way it moved, the perfect balance, the casual confidence, the fact that it seemed to be evaluating every living thing in the room as potential prey or entertainment. "Jake," Professor Krell said carefully, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Exactly how dangerous is your companion?" "Dangerous?" Jake laughed, reaching down to scratch behind Whisker's ears. The cat immediately began producing a low, rumbling sound that registered on the universal translators as something between a war chant and a mechanical engine preparing for launch. "He's totally harmless. The worst thing he's ever done is knock my coffee mug off the counter. Well, in that time he brought me a dead mouse, but I think he was just trying to be helpful." The aliens processed this information with growing horror. The creature hunted independently and brought trophies to its human companion. It had demonstrated territorial dominance over the human's possessions. And that sound, that continuous mechanical rumbling, was clearly some sort of threat display or preparation for combat. Thorne's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "It's purring." "Yeah, he loves attention," Jake said, continuing to pet the orange killing machine. "Sometimes he purrs so loud I can't sleep. It's actually kind of annoying." Whiskers, apparently deciding he'd been still long enough, stood up and executed a perfect predatory stretch. Every muscle in his compact frame was visible for a moment, showcasing the kind of lean efficiency that spoke of thousands of years of evolutionary refinement. Then he yawned, displaying fangs that might have been small by Earth standards, but looked absolutely terrifying to creatures who'd never seen a terrestrial carnivore up close. Pip made a small squeaking sound and promptly fainted, toppling off her desk with a tiny thud. "Oh no, is she okay?" Jake asked, looking genuinely concerned. Whiskers didn't mean to scare anyone. He's actually super friendly once you get to know him. Whiskers, meanwhile, had noticed the sunbeam streaming through the classroom window. With the casual arrogance of a creature who had never encountered anything it couldn't handle, he padded over to the patch of light and flopped down in it, immediately beginning to bask like some sort of furry solar collector. But even relaxed, even lying on his side in apparent contentment, there was something deeply unsettling about the way he kept one eye slightly open, tracking movement around the room. It was the behavior of a predator, so confident in its abilities that it could afford to appear vulnerable while remaining constantly ready to strike. Professor Krell realized his hands were shaking slightly. In all his years of military service, he'd never encountered anything quite like this. A predator that was simultaneously adorable and absolutely terrifying. A creature that radiated casual lethality, while appearing to be nothing more than a lazy ball of fur. "Jake," he said slowly, "I think we need to discuss Earth's definition of harmless." That's when Professor Krell made his first tactical error. In an attempt to regain control of the situation and demonstrate proper academic protocol, he activated the classroom's holographic pointer system. A small red dot appeared on the wall, perfectly designed for highlighting important information during lectures. Whisker's head snapped up like he'd been struck by lightning. "Oh no," Jake muttered, but it was too late. Every predatory instinct that evolution had packed into 12 pounds of orange fluff suddenly activated simultaneously. Whisker's pupils dilated to perfect black circles, his ears flattened against his skull, his tail began twitching with mechanical precision, and then, with the fluid grace of a creature born to kill, he dropped into a hunting crouch that would have made a Terran tiger weep with envy. "What's happening?" Professor Krell demanded, his military training screaming at him to run while his academic curiosity kept him frozen in place. "Laser pointer," Jake said helplessly. I should have warned you guys about laser pointers. Whiskers launched himself at the wall with explosive speed that defied his chubby appearance. The impact of 12 pounds of determined cat hitting solid surface echoed through the classroom like a gunshot. He scrabbled at the smooth wall for a moment, claws fully extended, before the dot moved. Then things got really interesting. What followed could only be described as a masterclass in predatory behavior. Whiskers didn't just chase the dot, he hunted it. His movements were calculated, efficient, and absolutely terrifying to creatures who suddenly realized they were watching millions of years of evolutionary perfection in action. He stalked the dot when it moved slowly, belly low to the ground, each paw placed with surgical precision to avoid making sound. When it moved quickly, he exploded into motion, with the kind of acceleration that should have been physically impossible for something his size. When it stopped, he froze completely, muscles coiled and ready to strike. Vex, still cowering under his desk, whispered, "It's toying with its prey. Look at the tactical precision. The patience. This is psychological warfare at its finest." Thorn's compound eyes tracked Whiskers' movements with the fascination of a professional warrior recognizing superior technique. The energy conservation is remarkable. Watch how it uses momentum and positioning to minimize effort while maximizing strike potential. My hive sisters could learn from this. Professor Krell found himself taking notes despite his terror. Observe the sensory integration. It's processing visual tracking, spatial awareness, and predictive modeling simultaneously. The cognitive load should be overwhelming, yet it maintains perfect physical control. Jake, meanwhile, was trying to get everyone to calm down while Whiskers performed feats of athletic prowess that seemed to violate several laws of physics. "Guys, he's just playing. This is normal cat behavior. He does this with bottle caps and dust bunnies too." "Bottle caps?" Vex shrieked from his hiding spot. "It practices its killing techniques on metallic objects? What kind of training regimen do Earth predators undergo?" The red dot suddenly zipped up the wall and across the ceiling. Whiskers, without missing a beat, leapt onto a desk, then to a shelf, then executed a wall-running maneuver that carried him halfway across the room in pursuit. His claws found purchase on surfaces that shouldn't have supported his weight, and he moved through three-dimensional space like gravity was merely a suggestion. "Sweet, merciful void," Professor Krell breathed. "It's adapted for zero-G combat." "Actually," Jake said, watching Whiskers perform what could only be described as ceiling parkour, "I think he just really wants to catch the dot. He's very goal-oriented." Pip had regained consciousness just in time to witness Whiskers drop from the ceiling in a controlled fall that brought him within inches of the laser dot. She immediately fainted again. But the real moment of truth came when the dot stopped moving. Whiskers froze in place, one paw raised, every muscle in his body held in perfect tension. His eyes locked onto the stationary dot with the kind of focus that could burn holes through starship hull plating. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. Then Whiskers pounced with such explosive violence that 2 aliens screamed. Professor Krell dove behind his podium, and Jake reflexively reached for the laser pointer to turn it off. "No!" Professor Krell shouted. "Don't interrupt the kill sequence, we need to document this." But Jake had already clicked off the laser pointer, and the red dot vanished. Whiskers found himself pawing at empty wall, looking confused and slightly annoyed. He sat down, licked his paw once, and then turned to stare at Jake with an expression that clearly said, "You have betrayed me, human, and I will remember this." "Sorry, buddy," Jake said apologetically. "I know how much you love the dot, but you're kind of freaking everyone out." The classroom remained in stunned silence as Whiskers, apparently deciding the excitement was over, wandered back to his sunbeam and flopped down for what appeared to be a post-hunt nap. His breathing returned to normal within seconds, as if the display of predatory perfection had been nothing more than light exercise. Professor Krell slowly emerged from behind his podium, his professional composure hanging by a thread. "Jake," he said carefully, "that was the most terrifying display of hunting behavior I've witnessed in 40 years of predator studies. And you're telling me this creature lives in your dwelling and you consider it harmless?" "Well, yeah," Jake shrugged. "I mean, he's never actually caught the dot. I'm starting to think he's not very good at hunting." The statement hit the classroom like a photon torpedo. Not good at hunting. The creature that had just demonstrated tactical superiority over trained military personnel was, in its human's opinion, a failure as a predator. Vex's voice drifted up from under his desk, barely audible. "What do the successful Earth predators look like?" Jake considered this seriously. "Well, my neighbor has this cat named Princess Fluffington, who actually catches mice. She's probably twice as fast as Whiskers, and way more aggressive. Really sweet, though. Loves belly rubs." The entire classroom simultaneously decided that Earth was definitely off limits for future vacation planning. That's when the universe decided things weren't quite chaotic enough and Whiskers got the zoomies. It started innocently. Whiskers was lying peacefully in his sunbeam, looking like the picture of feline contentment, when something invisible apparently flipped a switch in his brain. His eyes went wide, his ears perked up, and suddenly he looked like he'd been plugged directly into a fusion reactor. "Oh no," Jake said, recognizing the signs immediately. "Whiskers, buddy, maybe not right now." Too late. Whiskers exploded into motion like a furry orange missile, launching himself from his sunny spot with zero warning. He hit the floor running at maximum velocity, which for a house cat translates to roughly approaching light speed in terms of relative panic induction. Professor Krell's military instincts kicked in immediately. "Battle stations!" he roared, diving behind his desk as Whiskers rocketed past him in a blur of orange fury. "The creature has entered combat mode!" "Combat mode?" Jake blinked in confusion as Whiskers ricocheted off the far wall and came tearing back across the room like a guided missile with fur. "He's just got the zoomies. It's like when cats suddenly decide they need to run around for no reason." "No reason?" Vex shrieked from his hiding spot as Whiskers vaulted over his desk without even slowing down. "This is clearly a territory-claiming ritual. It's marking the entire space as its hunting ground." Thorne's compound eyes tracked Whiskers' movements with the desperate intensity of someone trying to predict incoming artillery. "The pattern appears random, but there's method to it. Watch how it's mapping every possible escape route while simultaneously establishing dominance over all elevated positions." She wasn't wrong. Whiskers had somehow turned the classroom into his personal parkour course. He leaped onto desks, bounced off chairs, used the walls as launching points, and at one point performed what could only be described as a barrel roll around a support pillar. His route seemed chaotic, but he never once collided with anything or lost his footing. "He's demonstrating superior spatial awareness," Professor Krell observed, making notes while crouched behind his desk. "Every movement serves multiple purposes: reconnaissance, territorial marking, and intimidation display." "Actually," Jake said, watching Whiskers perform a gravity-defying leap between two bookcases, "I think he just saw a dust bunny and decided it needed to die." This casual revelation sent fresh waves of terror through the alien students. A predator so finely tuned that microscopic debris triggered its hunting protocols, so efficient that it could transition from rest to full combat readiness in nanoseconds, so confident that it treated live training exercises as recreational activities. Whiskers chose that moment to demonstrate another classic house cat behavior. The sudden stop. 1 second he was moving at what appeared to be Mach 2, the next he was sitting perfectly still in the middle of the room, grooming his paw as if nothing had happened. The abrupt cessation of movement was somehow more terrifying than the chaos had been. "Why did it stop?" Professor Krell whispered, not daring to move from his defensive position. "He probably forgot what he was chasing," Jake replied cheerfully. "Cats have pretty short attention spans for things that aren't food or naps." Short attention spans. The implications hit the aliens like a cargo hauler. This was a predator so supremely adapted that it could switch between maximum alertness and complete relaxation instantly, conserving energy while maintaining the ability to respond to threats with explosive violence. That's when the emergency alarm started going off. Apparently, Whiskers' high-speed reconnaissance mission had triggered every motion sensor, heat detector, and security protocol in the building. The classroom's emergency containment fields activated, sealing all exits. Red lights flashed. Automated voices began announcing lockdown procedures in 17 different languages. "Attention," the building's AI announced in perfectly calm tones that somehow made everything more terrifying. "Unauthorized predator activity detected in classroom 7G. Initiating emergency protocols. All personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance." "Oh, come on," Jake sighed, pulling out his communicator to call campus security. "This is the 3rd time this week. Whiskers, you're gonna get me kicked out of school." Whiskers, oblivious to the chaos he'd caused, had discovered something fascinating under one of the desks. His entire attention was now focused on what appeared to be absolutely nothing, but he was stalking it with the intense concentration of a creature preparing to end a life. "3rd time?" Professor Krell's voice cracked slightly. "This happens regularly?" "Well, yeah. The dorm motion sensors are pretty sensitive and Whiskers likes to play at night. The security team knows me pretty well by now." Jake paused his call to watch Whiskers pounce on empty air with deadly precision. "Good job, buddy. You totally got whatever that was." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Through the reinforced windows, they could see campus security forces setting up what appeared to be a military perimeter. Officers in full tactical gear were positioning themselves with the kind of practiced efficiency that suggested this was not their first alien predator incident. "Jake Martinez," came a weary voice over the building's communication system. "Is that your cat again?" "Hi, Commander Peterson," Jake called back. "Sorry about this. He's just being playful." "Playful," Peterson's voice repeated flatly. "Your playful cat just triggered a campus-wide emergency alert. My officers think we're dealing with a Class 5 predator incursion." Through the containment field, they could see Peterson approaching with the kind of careful movements usually reserved for bomb disposal. He was wearing full combat armor and carrying enough firepower to level a small building, but his expression suggested this was just another Tuesday. "Could you maybe keep him contained for 5 minutes while I call off the tactical response team?" Peterson asked. "The Chancellor is starting to ask questions about our emergency protocol budget." "Sure thing," Jake said, scooping up Whiskers, who immediately began purring like a tiny engine of destruction. "He's probably ready for a nap anyway. All that running around really tires him out." The purring sound echoed through the classroom's audio system, amplified to the point where it sounded like a starship engine warming up for hyperspace. Every alien in the room instinctively pressed themselves closer to the floor. "Jake," Professor Krell said quietly, his voice barely audible over the mechanical rumbling of Whiskers' contentment. "I'm beginning to understand why humans were admitted to the Galactic Federation so quickly." "Really?" Jake asked, genuinely pleased. "That's great. I was worried everyone would think Earth creatures were boring." Outside, they could hear Commander Peterson calling off the emergency response. "False alarm, people. Stand down to condition normal. Yes, it was the cat again. No, we don't need orbital bombardment. Someone get me a very large cup of coffee and update the emergency protocols to include domestic Earth predator as a Category 7 non-threat." Whiskers, meanwhile, had settled into Jake's arms and was now staring directly at Professor Krell, with the satisfied expression of a creature that had successfully established dominance over an entire academic institution without breaking a sweat. The emergency containment fields powered down with a soft hum, and the red alert lights faded back to normal classroom illumination. But the atmosphere in the room had fundamentally changed. Professor Krell sat heavily in his chair, looking like a soldier who'd survived a battle but wasn't entirely sure how. His 4 hands trembled slightly as he attempted to organize his notes, most of which now consisted of frantic observations like, "Moves like liquid death," and pure in his psychological warfare. Vex remained under his desk, occasionally peeking out to make sure Whiskers wasn't planning another territorial display. His species had conquered 12 star systems, but apparently 12 pounds of orange fluff had successfully conquered him. Thorne's compound eyes kept tracking every micro-movement Whiskers made, her warrior instincts unable to accept that the creature was actually just a sleepy cat. She'd been bred for combat, genetically engineered for warfare, trained from hatching to fear nothing, and yet here she sat, calculating escape routes from a classroom containing what humans casually called a pet. Pip had regained consciousness for the 3rd time, taken one look at Whiskers contentedly grooming himself in Jake's lap, and decided to just stay on the floor. It seemed safer than trying to climb back onto her desk, where the orange terror might notice her again. "So," Jake said cheerfully, completely oblivious to the traumatized state of his classmates, "I guess that concludes my presentation on Earth predators. Any questions?" The silence stretched for a full 30 seconds. Finally, Professor Krell cleared his throat with the careful dignity of someone trying to maintain professional composure after having his worldview completely destroyed. "Jake," he said slowly, "I'm going to cancel today's class, possibly permanently. I need to file some very unusual reports with the Academic Review Board." "Oh, okay," Jake nodded agreeably. "Did I do something wrong? I mean, Whiskers was just being himself. That's pretty normal behavior for a house cat." "Normal," Professor Krell repeated the word like it had personally offended him. "Jake, in 40 years of studying galactic predators, I have never witnessed anything quite like what your normal companion just demonstrated. The tactical awareness, the explosive speed, the casual dominance display, the psychological impact on trained military personnel." "Wait," Jake interrupted, looking genuinely confused. "Are you saying Whiskers impressed you guys? Because I have to tell you, he's actually kind of lazy compared to most cats. My sister's cat, Mr. Mittens, once caught 3 mice in one night and left them arranged in a perfect triangle outside her bedroom door. Now, that's what I call efficient hunting." Vex made a strangled sound from under his desk. Thorne's wings began vibrating at stress frequencies. Pip whimpered softly. Professor Krell felt something that might have been his sanity finally snap. Your species casually cohabits with creatures that could serve as elite military units, and you consider the less successful ones lazy? Well, yeah, Jake shrugged. I mean, they're just cats. They sleep like 18 hours a day, knock stuff off counters, and sometimes they bring you dead things as presents. Pretty standard pet behavior. Presents, Vex whispered in horror. They bring tribute kills to demonstrate their hunting prowess. And the counter behavior, Thorne added with dawning understanding. It's testing the structural integrity of your dwelling, checking for defensive weaknesses. Professor Krell was rapidly taking notes again, his academic instincts overriding his terror. Jake, I need to understand something. How many humans keep these creatures as companions? Oh, tons. Probably millions. Cats are really popular pets. Dogs too, but dogs are different. They're more like… Jake paused, trying to think of a good comparison. Well, dogs are like having a really loyal friend who's always happy to see you. Cats are more like having a roommate who judges all your life choices, but occasionally lets you pet them. Millions, Professor Krell wrote in his notes, the stylus nearly tearing through the digital pad. Entire human population coexists with apex predators as casual companions. Actually, Jake continued helpfully, some people have multiple cats. My aunt has 7. Her house is basically a small-scale ecosystem at this point, really impressive hunting coordination when they all decide to chase the same laser pointer. The image of 7 whisker-level predators operating in coordinated pack tactics sent a collective shudder through the remaining conscious aliens. Professor Krell, came Commander Peterson's voice through the communication system. I need to speak with you about updating our emergency protocols. Apparently, we need to add a new category for harmless Earth companion animals that trigger military-grade threat responses. Noted, Commander. Professor Krell replied weakly. Please also add a request to the Galactic Immigration Board for a complete review of Earth's fauna classification system. I suspect we may have seriously underestimated their entire biosphere. Jake stood up, gently placing Whiskers back in his carrier. The cat went willingly, apparently satisfied with his demonstration of superiority over the local academic establishment. As the carrier door closed, every alien in the room visibly relaxed. Well, this was fun, Jake said brightly. Same time next week, Professor? I could bring my neighbor's cat, Princess Fluffington. She's way more active than Whiskers. No, came the immediate chorus from every alien in the room, including Commander Peterson over the communications system. Professor Krell composed himself with visible effort. Jake, you've earned an A+ in this course. In fact, you've earned an A+ in every Predator Studies course this institution offers. Please accept this commendation, and consider your academic requirements fulfilled. Really? Awesome, Jake grinned. Though I'm kind of surprised. I mean, all Whiskers did was act like a normal cat. And that, Professor Krell realized with crystalline clarity, was exactly the problem. If this was normal for Earth's domestic predators, what did that say about the creatures humans considered actually dangerous? As Jake left the classroom, carrier in hand and completely oblivious to the academic chaos he'd unleashed, Professor Krell made a final note in his research log. Recommendation: reclassify Earth as a galactic protected zone. Not to protect Earth from us, but to protect us from Earth. Further research into human-predator cohabitation protocols may prove essential for galaxy-wide survival strategies. Whiskers, meanwhile, settled into his carrier for a well-deserved nap, completely unaware that he'd just caused the first recorded case of an entire Predator Studies program requesting immediate psychiatric evaluation. In the distance, the sound of Commander Peterson updating emergency protocols could be heard. New Regulation 47B. In the event of domestic Earth predator incidents, all personnel are to remain calm, avoid sudden movements, and remember that the creatures are apparently friendly. Probably. Maybe. Someone get me that coffee! And somewhere in the academic filing system, a new research paper began taking shape. Humans, the only species crazy enough to domesticate apex predators and call them lazy. It would go on to win several prestigious xenobiology awards, though none of the review committee would ever volunteer to visit Earth for field research.